There are wounds that no one can see, scars buried deep beneath the surface. They don't bleed, but they hurt. They don't bruise, but they linger. Emotional self-harm is one of the most overlooked yet deeply damaging patterns that we carry in silence. It isn't about what others do to us, but what we do to ourselves without even realizing it. While physical self-harm is more visible and often addressed directly, emotional self-harm can be a silent destroyer. It operates in the shadows of our minds, convincing us that we're unworthy, unlovable, and broken. The tragedy lies in its invisibility, the way it hides behind perfectionism, self-doubt, toxic inner monologues, and emotional suppression. Most of the time, people who emotionally harm themselves do it unknowingly. They might even believe they're being humble, responsible, or realistic. But behind these patterns is a cycle of pain that chips away at self-worth. It's time to bring those patterns into the light. Let's talk about the 7 signs of emotional self-harm that you need to recognize, because awareness is the first step to healing. The first sign of emotional self-harm is constantly putting yourself down in your own mind. The voice inside your head is powerful. It's the one you hear the most. And when that voice becomes your biggest bully, it turns your mind into a battlefield. You might hear it say, "I'm not good enough," "I'll never succeed," or "Why do I always mess everything up?" Yeah, these thoughts don't come out of nowhere. They're often rooted in past trauma, failure, or years of negative conditioning. But when you internalize them, repeat them, and believe them, they begin to define your identity. You stop seeing yourself through a lens of compassion, and instead view yourself through the eyes of your inner critic. The sad part is, most people don't even question these thoughts. They believe them as facts. They don't realize that every harsh word they tell themselves is another cut to their self-esteem. Emotional self-harm starts when you begin to believe you deserve pain, that you don't belong, or that your dreams are too big for someone like you. But none of those lies serve you. They only diminish your light. And recognizing this inner sabotage is the beginning of reclaiming your power. The second sign is sabotaging your own happiness because you feel you don't deserve it. This shows up in subtle ways. You pull away from good relationships, procrastinate on opportunities, or downplay your achievements. You might laugh off compliments or feel uncomfortable when things start going well. There's a voice deep inside that whispers, "This won't last," or "You don't deserve this kind of love." That voice convinces you to push away anything that feels too good, too real, too kind. So you settle for less, stay in toxic environments, or choose paths that keep you small. This isn't because you lack ambition or hope. It's because something in you has associated happiness with danger or failure. Maybe you grew up in chaos, so peace feels foreign. Maybe you were told that wanting more is selfish. But this pattern keeps you stuck in survival mode. You begin to believe that joy is fleeting and pain is permanent. Emotional self-harm convinces you that suffering is safer than healing. But that lie steals your right to feel fulfilled. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to receive love. You are allowed to succeed without guilt. Another major sign of emotional self-harm is people-pleasing at the expense of your own well-being. When your entire self-worth is based on being liked, needed, or validated by others, you begin to erase your own needs. You say yes when your heart screams no. You sacrifice your rest, your boundaries, and your truth just to avoid disappointing someone else. And while on the surface it looks like kindness or generosity, underneath it is a painful fear of rejection. You believe that your worth is conditional, that if you're not useful, agreeable, or available, you'll be abandoned. So you become everything to everyone except yourself. Over time, this pattern builds resentment, exhaustion, and emotional emptiness. You start to lose your identity in the roles you play. You forget what you want, what you love, what you believe. Emotional self-harm through people-pleasing is dangerous because it disguises itself as love, but it's rooted in fear. Real love never requires you to shrink yourself. Real relationships will never demand the destruction of your spirit for the comfort of others. You deserve to have boundaries, to say no, and to put your own needs first without shame. The fourth sign is staying in toxic relationships because you think you don't deserve better. Whether it's romantic, platonic, or familial, a toxic relationship can poison your self-worth over time. Emotional self-harm convinces you that the way others treat you is a reflection of your value. So when someone lies, manipulates, disrespects, or ignores your feelings, you make excuses for them instead of protecting yourself. You tell yourself, maybe I'm too sensitive, or if I were better, they'd treat me better. That mindset keeps you trapped. It blinds you to the reality that abuse doesn't have to be physical to be damaging. Emotional neglect, verbal attacks, and manipulation are all forms of violence. But when your inner narrative is already broken, you accept crumbs and call it a feast. You become addicted to chaos because peace feels unfamiliar. You mistake drama for passion, control for care, and silence for stability. Recognizing this pattern is hard, Walking away feels impossible. But staying in pain just because it's familiar is not love. It's emotional self-destruction. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul, not drain it. A fifth sign of emotional self-harm is bottling up your emotions and pretending to be okay when you're not. Strength doesn't mean silence, but we live in a world that often praises emotional suppression as bravery. You might have learned that crying is weakness, that vulnerability is dangerous, or that your pain is an inconvenience to others. So you put on a smile, keep busy, and bury your feelings so deep you forget how to access them. But emotions don't disappear. They build up. They manifest as anxiety, depression, rage, or physical illness. And every time you deny your feelings, you send yourself the message that your pain doesn't matter. Emotional self-harm through suppression is like locking a screaming child in a closet. You might not hear them for a while, but eventually that scream becomes unbearable. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to break down. You are allowed to ask for help. Your emotions are not the enemy. They're messengers. And they're trying to tell you something important. Stop silencing your own voice to protect others from your truth. Your pain is valid, and your healing begins with honesty. The sixth sign is perfectionism and self-punishment when you fall short. Striving for excellence isn't the problem. Expecting flawlessness and punishing yourself when you fall short is. Emotional self-harm shows up when you tie your worth to your achievements, when you make one mistake and label yourself a failure, when you feel like nothing is ever good enough no matter how much you do. This internal pressure becomes unbearable. You become your own harshest judge, never satisfied, always chasing an unreachable ideal. Instead of celebrating progress, you focus on what you haven't done. Instead of seeing mistakes as learning, you see them as proof of your inadequacy. And this cycle creates burnout, shame, and chronic dissatisfaction. You begin to believe that rest is laziness, that vulnerability is unproductive, and that joy must be earned. But you are not a machine. Your value does not lie in your output. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love, peace, and rest. Emotional self-harm hides behind ambition. But there's a difference between pushing yourself and punishing yourself. You deserve grace, even when you fall. The seventh and final sign of emotional self-harm is isolating yourself and believing you must face everything alone. When you've been hurt, disappointed, or betrayed, it's tempting to build walls around your heart. You convince yourself that people can't be trusted, that your pain is too much, or that nobody will understand. So, you withdraw. You stop reaching out. You tell people you're fine when you're falling apart inside. This kind of isolation isn't peace, it's protection. But it's also loneliness in disguise. Emotional self-harm thrives in silence. It feeds on the lie that you're a burden, that your existence is a problem, and that your presence doesn't matter. And over time, this isolation deepens your wounds. Healing happens in connection. You don't have to share everything with everyone. But you do need someone who sees you, hears you, and holds space for your pain without trying to fix it. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the pathway to freedom. You were never meant to carry your pain alone. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are human, and you are allowed to need others. Emotional self-harm doesn't leave physical scars, but it can be just as painful, if not more. It's the internal war that happens when you turn your pain inward. It's the quiet suffering that nobody notices because you've become so good at hiding it. But hiding it doesn't heal it. Pretending doesn't make it disappear. You cannot hate yourself into healing. You cannot shame yourself into growth. The truth is, healing starts when you stop punishing yourself and start showing yourself the same compassion you so easily give to others. It begins when you recognize the patterns, name them, and challenge them. It begins when you choose to stop believing the lies your pain has told you. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too far gone. You are not hopeless. You are healing, even in the moments when it doesn't feel like it. And every step you take towards self-compassion, no matter how small, is a step toward freedom. If you recognize yourself in these signs, know that you are not alone. Millions of people walk this path in silence. But silence doesn't have to be your story forever. Speak up, reach out, heal forward, because you deserve a life filled with love, peace, and the kind of joy that doesn't require permission. The world needs the version of you that isn't hiding behind pain, the version of you that feels free to be whole, and you are worthy of becoming that version, not someday, but starting today.